Tonight, what we're talking about is the business plan. Just in case you missed it last week, we talked about the business plan as well. And the week before, we talked about the business plan. So really what we did, just to break it into three chunks, okay? The first chunk, 3 weeks ago, we looked at it and we said, okay, the business plan, what do we do? Well, it's a lot of work to build a business plan, okay? Everyone recognizes that it's a lot of work. So one of the things we need to do is to really do a little first cut on business ideas before we start building a business plan, because it is such a big and huge effort. That first cut is called a feasibility analysis, and that's where you go out and get a bunch of information on your business idea. And that bunch of information is really designed to tell you, yes, this is something that potentially could be feasible, or to eliminate it altogether because it's not feasible. Okay, so it's sort of like if you think of a screen when we're screening sand or screening rock. This is the first cut, and it is a rough cut to say, look, anything that doesn't meet the standard, we're not going to look any further at. So the feasibility analysis is really designed as a rough cut to say, yeah, this could potentially work, or no, this is not going to work at all. So the feasibility analysis is not really a business plan. It is, though, it has in it the underpinnings of a business plan. So let's assume that we've done the feasibility analysis for a particular business idea, and we think, yeah, this might be something. This might be some idea that I can pursue. Well, then we move into a full-scale business plan. Now, full-scale business plan consists of several parts. In fact, you could think of a business plan like a bunch of Lego blocks, okay? Those Lego blocks could be independent little plans in and of themselves that deal with one topic of the business. Last week, we looked at the first few Lego blocks, which is a general introduction, okay? So it's like a general introduction to your business plan. And you say, why do we have to do that? Well, the point of it is, if you're going to put a business plan in front of someone for the purposes of getting them to invest, to consider your business, to look at you and say, yeah, I'm going to put some money in this. That first part is critical because it is the sales pitch. It is really the sales pitch for your business plan. It says to someone who reads it, the first few pages, it says to someone, this is an idea that could potentially work. And it's designed to be tight. It's designed to be factual. It's designed to be entertaining and informative, meaning that it's written in such a way that it gives a lot of information very quickly. Then, if someone says, wow, this is neat, I'd like to find out a little bit more. So you can think that as you move through your business plan, we get deeper and deeper into detail, okay? Less detail in front, more general in the front, then we move into the detail. So tonight, we're looking at the detail side. So last week, we looked at the introduction, sales pitch side, that kind of thing that gets people interested. And tonight, we're looking at the sales pitch side. And really, if we think about the sales pitch sides, the sales pitch side generally focuses on the topics that we've discussed in this program. So we have talked about human resources. That was the first thing we talked about. Any business plan is going to have to lay out how in the heck are you going to get the people to do the work that needs to be done in order to make this business a success. What are the skills that those people need? How many of those people do you have? Where are those people going to be located? How much is it going to cost to hire those people? Those sorts of things. So the human resource component is like a separate little entity that's embedded into your business plan. You could take it out. It's one of the blocks. It's human resources. Now, considering that human resources is the most expensive thing that you will have in your business, when you pay people, and if you look at the end of the year and you say, okay, what were my expenses? Your payroll expenses are probably going to be your highest expense for your business, okay? So it's a very, very important part. And that is really going to dictate whether your business succeeds or not, because not only is it expensive, but it also brings the assets of people, skills and talent to the workplace. The second major component that you will find in the business plan, and by the way, the order of these is irrelevant, okay? It doesn't matter how they're ordered, but the fact is you need a little bit there you need detailed information on human resources. You also have to have some detailed information on sales and marketing. That is, one of the components that we looked at, but it's also how are you going to sell the products that you have to your potential customers? Who are your potential customers? So it deals with all of the issues with regards to the marketing, the customer, how are you going to satisfy the customer needs, that sort of thing. It is called the marketing plan. Sometimes you hear the term marketing plan. Well, the marketing plan is a component of the business plan, and it outlines all of those things. And again, marketing plan is extremely important, because if you can't produce a product that satisfies the needs of the customer, nobody's going to buy your product and your business will not succeed. So it's a very important part. A third element that you would want to put in, which is another block in the puzzle that goes to making a business plan, is the operations plan. And the operations plan is critical too, because it says, how are you going to do what you're going to do? What kind of buildings you're going to have? What kind of equipment you're going to have? What kind of what's the layout of it going to be? Depending on what you're selling, that's going to make a big difference. If you, for example, need a huge factory, how's the factory going to be set up? How are you going to efficiently move product through the factory to complete? Or if you're going to operate a machine shop, what are the physical tools that you're going to have in the machine shop to do the jobs that you need to do? Another critical component that you need to find, which is kind of like an independent part of the business plan, is the financial aspect of it. Now, we look at the finance unit, and the finance unit, what we're really talking about there is money, okay? Where is the money coming from? Where is the money going to be used? Okay, so the financial part of the plan is really a very detailed outline of where your revenues are coming from, what do you anticipate as the flow of money coming into your business, how much is coming in, when is it coming in, like, is it coming in the winter, is it coming in the summer, is it coming in evenly throughout the year, what kind of a trajectory does it have it over the years, do you see growth, these sorts of things. And we're going to look at your expenses too, and when is the money going out of your business, and what is the schedule for that? Do the money coming in match the schedule going out? Do you have enough money coming in to pay the bills, for example? So those are the types of things that the financial plan is really going to talk about. And again, it's all hooked to the other components because they all have to integrate into a basic, concise document that outlines a business in its totality. The fifth major component of the business plan is something called a risk management. Sometimes risk management is built into another section, but effectively, what are you going to do in order to protect the business against potential problems? Say, for example, it burns down. Well, one of the simple things that we do in order to protect against things burning down or things getting destroyed is buying insurance. So a risk management plan is really going to outline how are you going to manage the risk of given things in the business. How are you going to risk people stealing stuff? How are you going to manage risk of businesses burning down? How are you going to manage the risk of inclement weather? These sorts of things. So depending on the business, certain risks are going to be more prominent than the other, and you want to make sure that you've covered those off in risk management. So what we're going to do tonight is to look at these in some degree of detail, okay? Any questions? Well, let's just flow down through the slides and to get a sense of where we are. We know, first of all, we've talked about a business plan enough now to know that a business plan really defines what the business is, identifies the goals of the business. It basically serves as a firm's resume. So a resume to potential investors and a guide for you. It helps to allocate resources properly. So it shows that someone's put some thought into this before they actually go out and do it. It also looks at things like handling unforeseen circumstances, the risk management aspect of it, and making the right decisions. Again, the finance, the operations, all of those relate to putting some thought and to show that you're headed in a direction that you really have put a lot of thought into to minimize risk. The business plan is important for two major reasons. First of all, for you internally, it helps you plan out these things. It forces you to give it some thought before you spend any money. And second of all, it really lays out a plan that potential investors can look at to say, I should invest in this. Now, the business plan is designed to be what's called a dynamic document. In other words, once you do it, you're not done with it. It's constantly being updated. So as I say, the old 3-ring binder was useful for business plans back in the days when they were all on paper, because you could take pages out and put new pages in. Today, effectively, it's all done on a computer. We can add stuff in and out. Most of us are fairly familiar with word processing programs or spreadsheets now, so that we can add or change or manipulate the business plan as we go along. So these documents are designed really to be updated and changed. They're fluid documents, or living documents, sometimes we hear the term. Now, last week we looked at this first part of the business plan, the core issue. And when we talk about the core issue of the business plan, we got to have a cover page that says what the document is. Someone has to look at it and be able to say, yeah, that's a business plan. This is what it's about. We also have to have a short history of the business, if there's one applicable. We got to think about we got to state, why is doing this business? What is the opportunity that you're capturing here with this business? The strategy, the vision, the main objectives for your business, what do you want the business to do, and some sort of time frame in that. And we're also going to look at the business environment. In the environment is where the business operates. So if you're in Newfoundland, for example, what's the business environment in Newfoundland? Do you see opportunity? I was watching the news tonight. We see, EVs are going to become popular. And I know Evan might not be here, but Evan might be listening later on. Evan Cox was in St. John's today at the college talking about safety for firefighters in electric vehicles. Well, a lot of organizations, or a lot of fire departments, are going to have to start considering electric cars as they get more common on the road, for example. So that's what we mean by the business environment. Description of product or service. Everyone needs to know what the business is about. The basic business structure. How's the business going to be set up? And a plan for the future. So that's going to be a nutshell that you're going to give someone. They're going to read no more than 15 pages and have a good vision of what exactly you want to do. Now, they're probably, if they're enticed enough, if you've titillated them enough with that 15 pages, they're going to say to you, okay, I got some questions on that. I want some detail on the financials, or detail on other aspects. Well, that's what the back half of the business plan is all about. The back half of the business plan builds on that. And as I say, normally business plans, there's no set order for a business plan, no set, this is what you need, but these tend to be the major components that you find in a business plan. Okay, so people, very key in a business. Human resources plan, how are you going to manage the people, where are you going to get the people, how are you going to pay the people, how are you going to keep the people, how are you going to train the people. These are the things that is found in the human resource component. The sales and marketing component is how you're going to connect with your customers. If you can't sell your product, your business is dead in the water. So you really need a good plan for being able to sell the product that you have. The operations plan, how are you going to deliver on what you're doing? A lot of companies run into problems in operations because they haven't planned the scale of their business enough. Take, for example, in Carboneer. Carboneer, a few years ago, there was a company that made shoes. Okay, they made work boots. It was a pretty good little company. They had a nice deal on. And then they got a contract with Walmart. And Walmart wanted them to supply loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of boots. Now, was this little company set up to supply loads and loads of boots? No, they weren't. They expanded fast. They bought equipment. They got themselves in some financial, they stretched themselves, basically. And then they ran into financial problems. Sometimes, if you can't scale your business properly, you can run into problems. If you get a big contract, for example, if you're a little fish and you bite off more than you can chew, you can run into problems because you've overextended yourself in your business. So the operations plan, the sales and marketing plan, all are going to be related to making the business right size and the right tools and right efficiency in order to be able to get that product out the door to satisfy the customer needs. The financial plan is how you're going to pay for it, where's the money going to come from, where's the revenues going to come from, what's your expenses, what kind of a roadmap do we have going forward of money coming in, money going out. And the risk management plan, as I say, deals with this issue of how do we manage risk. The business grows too big. The business catches fire. These sorts of things. What do we do? Think about common risk And when we think about risk is really a function of how much is this going to put a stop to your business, basically. That's what we mean by measuring risk is what are the key ones that could kill your business? What are you going to do to manage those? So the human resource plan, looking at that one first. Human resource component is how to manage the employees in your business. We've looked at a whole unit with regards to human resource management, okay? And when we talk about human resource management, we talked about hiring people, training people, managing people. We talked about the idea of setting up some sort of a plan in terms of this one reports to this one, so some sort of a hierarchy, an ability to manage in a nice, complete way that allows people to feel good about working there. So your human resource plan forces you to think about those sorts of things. So it should outline a short-term and long-term plan for employees, how to get them, recruitment, how to select them, selection, how to keep them by training, and by retaining them, paying them enough money, for example, or treating them right. So if appropriate, discuss with any advisors, mentors, consultants that offer you some support. So here it's useful to talk to other people with regards to human resources, because the human resources and the plan that you put forth for human resources is going to be very important to the success of your company. So in terms of human resources, you say, well, what exactly are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about a bunch of things. We're talking about the management end. Who's managing your company? So the management team. Now, if you put me, for example, as on the management team and I knew nothing about that business. So let's assume that you're electricians. I know nothing about electricity. Am I a good manager for electricity if I know nothing about it? I may not be. So you want to make sure that your management team are in sync with your business. In other words, they're relative experts in the field. They don't have to be super duper experts, but at least they got to be familiar with it. You know, if you're going to be hiring the right people, you know that you got to find the right people to do the job. Your managers need to be clued in terms of what are the key skills that are required to be an electrician. So managers need to have some management ability, but they also need to know about the trade that they're working in. We talked about organizational charts, and the organizational chart clearly lays out who's managing who's below who's above who, how information flows. That's important. So one of the things you want to do in your human resource plan is to lay out an organizational chart. Here's the manager. Manager's going to have 2 or 3 people under him or her. Those people are responsible for these topics, that sort of thing. And that will clearly define what the roles are, what the reporting structure is, and how the business will be organized in order to be efficient and effective. Job descriptions are going to be important. We talked about back in the Human Resources chapter, the module about job descriptions and how we can find those using all kinds of online resources that provide those sorts of things. The Government of Canada, for example, what's called the NAC code, the National Classification System, how we can use that in order to help us define job descriptions. So if you're going to hire a carpenter, what's a job description for a carpenter? We can go to that website and kind of see what carpenters do. Again, it helps you build a skill inventory of what you need and then go out and find someone that meets those needs. So the essential skills required in the position basically is what you're going to need. And other relevant information with regards to personnel, such as if there are any gaps in the team. If, for example, you have some electrician experts, but you need some machinists as well, you need to say, okay, we need to find some machinists. This is the type of machinist we need. This is why. Training plans, partners. Usually partners are useful here if you can work with another organization to do the training, for example. Don't underestimate the importance of this part of the plan. As I say, human resources is probably the most expensive thing that you're going to have in your business and probably the most important. Investors need to know that you've thought about your employees, who you're going to be hiring, what the necessary skills that those employees are going to have, and how you're going to be able to make that match between what your needs are and what the employees bring to the job, and how much it's going to cost ultimately to do that. So specifically with regards to the management team, you talk about what their qualifications are going to be, how much experience they bring to the job or going to need to bring to the job, educational backgrounds, these sorts of things. So normally when you start a business, you're probably going to be the management. So what skills do you bring to it that matches the requirements for this? You want to be able to state that. Also, you're going to have to show the financial obligations. It's one thing to say that I'm not going to pay my managers anything. I'm not going to count that into my financial costs. How many people are going to work for nothing? Even you're going to want some return out of your business. So you're going to say, how much is it going to cost to hire managers? It's a fun thing to say, okay, I'm going to have 6 managers, make life easy for me. Well, you got to pay 6 managers. That comes with a cost. So you need to think about what is the cost of people that you put in those positions? How many people can you afford? How many people do you need? And to be able to demonstrate in the plan that you've clearly linked the number of people you hire with the cost of hiring them. The organizational chart is helpful. We've seen this chart before, and that's helpful for defining what your manager is going to be doing, what skill sets, what types of individuals you're going to have in the business, how many people you're going to need in the business. It lays out visually what you're doing in terms of the people you're hiring. The job description, as I say, the national classification code, the NOC codes allow you to do that. If you got a small business starting up, you're not going to have too many jobs, so you need to be able to get the job descriptions that you require. It's useful to do that in a business plan because when you actually put the ad out to hire people, you got it already developed. You just pull it right out of your business plan. You're going to need to do it anyway if you go hiring people, so it's good to be able to do that right up front. So consider things like key people in your business, what the roles, responsibilities would be, what requirements they have in terms of their skills, how many people you're going to need in the next couple of years, how much you're going to pay those people, what type of training you would need, and once you get the people, what are contacts and these sorts of things. So if you've already got people working for you, that would get built into the business plan as well. So that's the human resource one. That's the key things you want to have in that. Any questions? So that's one aspect of the business plan. Now, linked with that, because they're independent, they're Lego blocks, but keep in mind, those Lego blocks all connect together. So if you're going to have 3 managers and 6 workers, well, the sales and marketing plan is going to need to support the business that those people can do. So if you got 6 workers, you can say, well, 6 workers can produce 600 items. Can I sell 600 items a year? That sort of thing. So sales and marketing need to be linked to your human resources. So sales and marketing describes the activities that you're going to use to promote and sell the products. How do you define what the customer wants and how are you going to provide that to the customer? And we talked about this in our marketing unit. Really, what we mean by marketing is what is the product you're selling? What is the price you're planning on selling it for? That's going to tie into the financial component. Where are you going to sell it? That's going to tie into the marketing. Is there a market for where you're going to sell it? And how are you going to promote it? How are you going to communicate that to people? So your marketing strategy is really going to be laid out here. These are the types of products I'm going to sell. This is how I'm going to sell it. This is who I'm going to sell it to. This is how many I'm planning on selling. And that's going to generate X number of dollars, which will be used in my financial to come up with a number for estimated revenues. You need to say, too, that you've done within your marketing plan, that you've done a good market analysis of the environment that's going to sell into. Is there a market for the product you're selling? That's what you need to clearly demonstrate in the marketing plan. So in order to do that, you really need to do a market analysis. And that's going to say, I've done some research. I know there's a market for this product. I know that there's competitors out there, and I know that I can capture some of that market. What are the basic characteristics of the people that's going to buy from me? Are they well off? Are they tight on money? Is it something I can make a lot of money on a product, or is it something that I need to sell a lot of in order to make a little bit on each one? And that's going to again tie into your financials, because if you know that you can sell 600 units a year at $100 each, you can generate the revenue that's going to derive to your business. So the estimate of sales, the estimated cost of those sales are all helpful to get tied into the financial statement analysis. So the purpose of the market analysis is really to set stage for presenting your marketing strategy. We know that we can sell this product into this market and make this much money. That's effectively what you need to do there with the market analysis. The strategy is exactly how you're going to do that. So you've done, you got a product, you know that you've got a demand for that product, and how are we going to do that? So the strategy is laying it out. It's what we're going to do to sell this product. We're going to think about things like defining who exactly is buying this, our target buyers. We're going to segment. So we're going to say, okay, are we selling to residential customers? Are we selling to industrial customers? Are we selling to people who live over here? Are we selling to people over here? Segmenting can be broken up in a number of ways, but it basically says that we can't be all things to all people. So we're going to pick our customer sets that we want to sell to. Reasons why the product is unique. What makes your product stand out? Why would someone buy yours versus someone else's? Pricing philosophy, how you're managing your pricing. Plans for market research, how you're going to get the information you require. And ongoing product and service development plans. Are you going to expand your product range over the next couple of years? What is the plan? So the marketing component of a business plan can be pulled out of the business plan and sent off as an individual unit that someone can read and call it a marketing plan for the business. So it's the specific sales, the specific costs, the specific items that you plan to do is really your marketing plan, how you're going to do it. And that outlines basically how you're going to sell the product to your customer and how much you anticipate to make on that. That will flow into your financial plan. Now, so you've said now so far you're going to hire this number of people, you're going to do this type of marketing in order to sell this number of products. Okay, that's great. How are you going to get those products out the door? How are you going to get the products into the hands of your customer? That's the nuts and bolts of it, okay? The operations plan is really the nuts and bolts of your business. And if you haven't really done a good job in the operations plan, people are going to start to doubt that you can fulfill the requirements that you've talked about. Okay, I anticipate that there's a big market for this product. I know I got to sell 600 a year in order to meet my goals. Now, do you have a capacity to make 600? So, you need to think about your operations plan in relation to your marketing plan. To say, okay, my marketing plan, I said I'm going to sell 600 units. Can I make 600 units? What am I doing in order to make sure that links up? So the operation plan is really focused on the nuts and bolts. So it's an internal focus, unlike the others, which are really as much external focused as anything else. And it's really focused on the physical plant and what you're going to make at that physical plant. So what will the plant look like? How will it be set up? Where will it be located? How much can it make in terms of actual product? And that's going to translate into revenue, which is if I can make 600 units and sell them at $100 each, there's the revenue. We got to think about our costs. We're going to build this plant in a very expensive place, or we're going to build it in a relatively low expense place. It reviews the technical and operational components of the business venture. So it's very much an engineering type component of your business plan. So when we think about that, you're really talking about the site. What is the site? Here we usually go into graphical. This is a picture of the site. This is a picture of the floor plan of the building. These sorts of things get put in this section of the business plan. And you need to be able to clearly demonstrate that that site matches the needs of your customer. If you're doing a retail outfit, for example, do you have any retail space? Do you have any sales floor? These sorts of things are going to come into play. So it's important to know what your project site will look like, how it's going to be set up. And if you got a flow, like if you got a manufacturing flow spot where product A gets made here, it gets connected to product B, then connected to product C to make ABC product that goes out the door. So you need a flow pattern that naturally works. So a product isn't starting over here, going over here, and then coming back. You need something that shows a clean flow. It forces you to visualize the production process before you actually produce, okay? And it's going to give a good handle, too, on the technical issues of what you're doing. So what's the construction cost to build a building or to lease a building or to rent a building or these sorts of things? How much is that going to cost? That's going to be used in your financials as well. How long is it going to take to build it? How long is it going to take for the site to be ready? If you can't get a site until next year, you can't start your business until you got your site. So it's going to play into when your business can actually start. So some of the basic things that we're going to look for are our location. Where we're going to locate. Why are we locating there? Is that the best possible location? Will you succeed in that location? Just to be able to prove that that location is ideal for you. And you're going to talk about the elements that attract you to this location, the process you went through to identify the location, just to prove you've done your homework. This location is the best location. Traffic patterns, demographic patterns, these sorts of things. If you rely on a lot of walk-by traffic and nobody walks where you are planning setting up, that's not going to work. The competition in the area, competition analysis, where is your store relative to everyone else's? So effectively, this plan really needs to address a lot of these issues. Where's the site? Is it leased or purchased? What's the criteria for it? How big does it need to be? How is it set up? Is there adequate access for transfer trucks if you got stuff coming in? Do you have a loading bay? These sorts of things. What's the cost of the site? How much is that going to cost? And that's going to flow into your financial. Technical issues. What type of equipment needs do you require? How much will they cost? How long will it take to get the equipment? What is quantity requirements? Where are the suppliers for these pieces of equipment? How much raw material are you going to need in terms of an inventory? Availability of supply. Are people available to meet these requirements? Particularly, can you get this stuff easily? How much will it cost to get the people you require in order to do the job to make the things that you say you're going to make? And we think about operations too, really on three basic levels. We got to think about day-to-day operations. Yeah, how are we going to do this day-to-day? But we also think about longer term too. What are your requirements for the facility going to be as you get bigger, or these sort of things? Can you expand it? And do you have the technology, the management information systems to keep track of everything? Because if you've got a lot of product going through, how are you going to manage it? So you want to be able to prove that you have the ability to management. So management information, keeping track of inventory, particularly if inventory is expensive, you want to be able to keep good track of it. And inventory is a real problem for a lot of businesses, particularly because inventory tends to sit on a shelf and do nothing until you actually use it. So it costs you money to have inventory. However, if you don't have it, someone comes in looking for it, it costs you money there. So you got to find that magic combination of having the right amount of inventory that goes off the shelf quickly. So what's the maximum amount of inventory you need of a given item? Do you need to order early? Is the delivery time slow? So if it is, you probably need more on hand, these sorts of things. So you need, within your operations plan, how are you going to manage inventory? Because inventory is sitting on a shelf costs you a lot of money. So you need to make sure you got it on the shelf and that is making you money, not costing you money by just sitting there doing nothing. So your plan needs to outline how you're managing that. Also, you got materials and supplies that you run in your business. And this could be anything from paper to toilet paper to anything. What do you need in terms of materials and supplies? So this forces you in the operations plan to sit down and think about these sorts of things. How much, if you're manufacturing, how much steel do you need? How much raw material and steel do you need? Do you have a place to put it? Does it need to be kept indoors? Does it need to be heated? These sorts of things. Where are you getting it from? Who's the supplier? How much is it costing? How fast can you get it? All of these sorts of things. So reliability of supply comes into play. So you want to clearly indicate in your operations plan that you have all of these things thought about and managed. Another thing that you might want to think about is really getting into the weeds with regards to a physical plant, and that is things like permitting. Is this, if you want to put up a shop in Clarendon, for example, there's only certain parts of the town that you can put it. You're not allowed to put it in residential areas. So no sense to try to put it in a residential area if you can't do that. And what does it take in order to get a permit? How long does a permit need to take? Have you thought about that ahead of time? Equipment requirements, basic equipment requirements, the process of which you're going to get that product out the door, how much space you're going to need, what space is going to look like, parking requirements, all these sorts of things you really need to incorporate into your operations plan. And then you got what I call ancillary services, which is not really directly related to your manufacturing process, but you need an accountant. You need insurance services. You need legal services. Who are you going to get to do that? So your operations plan really should include who is it that you're going to have do these sorts of things. So it forces you to think about who could have potentially hired to do this or contract to do this work. And the implementation schedule. Everybody wants to see a schedule. So if you're planning to start a business, when are you planning to open the doors? How can you, and does it match with your operations plan? Can you get the products to get your store open in the next 6 months? Can you get the materials to produce some sort of an output in the next 6 months? Can you buy the machinery? Can you get the machinery installed? Can you make it work? Can you build a building? How long is that going to? That all needs to be matched up within your operations plan. So operations plan is really going to make or break people deciding whether or not your business is going to succeed or not, because they're going to say this operation plan makes sense, and you get a feel, that they've really got a lot of thought put into this, and it matches up with all of the other components. The fourth major component of the plan is something called the financial plan, and the financial plan ultimately is the one that's going to say, this place can make money, or this place is just throwing money down the toilet. So you need to demonstrate in your business plan, in the financial component of it, that all of the other things that you've talked about thus far will flow into a financial plan that clearly outlines that the business will bring more money in than goes out. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Is this a moneymaker outfit? So it describes your business and its activities in dollars and units. We're going to produce 600 units, sell them at $100 each. That's going to translate into a revenue. So the financial section of the business plan must demonstrate the viability of the business, not only now, but into the future. And it should include financial projections. So a projection is a best educated guess. It's not a guarantee, but you're going to have to make some projections in this that make sense. The question is can you demonstrate to someone reading the plan who's planning to invest that these make sense? Are they realistic projections? And you need to back them up. So if you say, we're going to start off with 600 a year, your marketing plan has to demonstrate that you can sell 600 a year. And if you say we're going to ramp up our production to triple in 3 years, your operations plan needs to demonstrate that you can do that in 3 years. You're going to build a bigger plant, hire more people, these sorts of things. So it all has to be synced up. So the section of your business plan really turns the plans into numbers. It's really turning it into dollars and cents and output. So it normally, the way that the financial projections are set up is you have a very detailed projection for year one. Very, very detailed. What I mean by very detailed is a monthly plan of money going through and money going out of the business, okay? Money coming in, money going out. You certainly, for the first year, You want a very detailed explanation of where the money's coming and where the money's going. People are going to want to look at that because, again, it needs to say, is this place going to be on the rocks before it starts, or is this place going to be good? And from your point of view, internal, if you create a plan that does a monthly breakdown, it gives you a benchmark to say, yeah, I'm meeting my targets or I'm not. So you can look at it and say, is this business doing as I thought it would as you move along? And you can make changes accordingly. The first year, as I say, is very detailed. As we move through second, third, fourth, fifth, and it's probably not worthwhile projecting out any more than 5 years because things change. The world is very hard to predict. As you move further away from now, your predictions are more loopy out there. There's no guarantees that will ever happen. Near-term projections should be relatively accurate. As you move further out, less accurate. So 3 to 5 years, the best you're going to do in terms of a long term. But you should have at least 3 years of projections going forward. Now, first year will be a monthly plan, monthly layer of projected finances. Year 2, 3, 4, and 5, if you put 4 and 5, will be a yearly. And one of the ways that you can say, well, how can I possibly project that? How can I? Well, one of the ways that companies often do that, or people who do this sort of thing often do, is they say to themselves, okay, we are crystal ball gazing to a certain degree, but here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do it under 3 scenarios. Actually, we're going to do this 3 times. And with spreadsheets these days, it's relatively easy to do. We're going to look at our plans going forward, 1 year detailed, out to 3 years. Okay. We're going to do it under 3 scenarios. First of all, an optimistic case. An optimistic case means that if we think we're going to sell 600 units, we plug in 600 units and all our numbers come, all our revenues come based on that. 600 units at $600 each, there's our flow of money. We can calculate. We know our expenses in terms of projecting how much it's going to cost for rent, how much it's going to cost for human resources, these sorts of things. Again, referring back to our human resource plans and our operations plans. So optimistically, we figure we can sell 600. And then we think, okay, well, what about it doesn't do that well? Let's look at a pessimistic point of view. Pessimistic point of view, let's say we only sell 200. So we do another scenario where we do exactly the same thing, project ahead a year, project ahead 3 years, based on what's called a pessimistic scenario, which is, say, 200 a year. So what we got is really 2 separate scenarios. One that says we're going to sell 600 a year, and another that says we're going to sell 200 a year. Now, the 600 one, we might end up showing that we're making money. 200 one, we might be losing money. But the fact is that we know that the reality will be somewhere between the pessimistic and optimistic. And in fact, we sometimes have a third element called a most likely or a realistic scenario where we take a number somewhere between what we believe is the best case scenario or potentially the worst case scenario. We pick a number somewhere in the middle in terms of our sales, in terms of numbers, to be able to generate an estimate for revenues, generate an estimate for expenses, and determine whether to, where the flows are going to be. So if we do 3 separate scenarios, optimistic, realistic, and pessimistic, it gives someone reading the plan a reasonable idea that, the business can make money if optimistic. Things go bad, and if they go really bad, we'll lose money. But again, most likely can demonstrate that we're making money, even though it's a smaller amount, the business plan is probably going to get a thumbs up from someone. So, because most likely is the most. If you had to be a betting man, you'd bet that most likely case is going to be the case. So someone's going to look at it and say, yeah, most likely means the business can make money. Let's invest in it. You're going to, once you've done your financial analysis and planning that we've done in the previous, I'm not going to go into the detail of it here because we looked at it in the financial components. We're really going to be able to come up with an idea of whether or not we should, this business is going to work the way we've thought about it. We're also going to have a good idea when we're going to need money. We're going to need to borrow money at certain points. We're going to need to, if we need to buy a machine this year, we're going to need money to pay for it, that sort of thing. So we're going to plan when we're going to need bank money, if we're going to go to a bank, or when we're going to need investors. We're also going to be able to plan when we feel that we'll be able to pay our bills based on the sales projection. So it'll give a forecast to us of when we should make money, when we're going to lose money, when we're going to need to borrow money, when we're going to need to seek extra money from investors. And it can help us kind of plan forward, but also demonstrate to potential investors that we've thought about when they should get their money back or when they should get paid. And, these sorts of things are going to come into question. Anyone giving you money, they're going to say, okay, how much money do you need? How much are you going to need to borrow? How much you need from me if I'm an investor? How much? When will I reasonably expect that back? What am I going to do when I get that back? What kind of security do you have? If everything goes bad, how am I going to get my money back? What timeline should I expect it to be repaid? And generally, will this business succeed? We've talked about in the financial section that your business plan really needs to include these basic statements, cash flow statements. We talked about cash flow. Cash flow is when the money comes in at certain dates, okay? When we anticipate money will come in and when we anticipate money will actually flow out of the business, as opposed to accounts receivable, which is not real money. It's someone's promising you to pay. When is the actual money going to flow in and when is it going to flow out? So cash flow statements are important. Certainly, we need a detailed cash flow statement for 12 months and less detailed as we move past 12 months. Profit and loss forecast. We need to be able to say to potential investors, it's unrealistic to think a business is going to make money in the first year. Very few businesses do. But by 3 years, it darn well better be making money. If it's not showing that it's making money in 3 years, then we really need to rethink the business. Sales forecast will give us an indicator of when we expect our sales, and it's also going to help plan for operations to say, okay, we're going to need to invest money to buy new equipment in order to get those extra sales. And probably one of the key ones that the financial plan is going to lay out to us is how much money we need to start this, the startup costs. We've seen the examples of a cash flow statement in the previous. So here's an example cash flow statement. It just lays out money coming in, money going out over the course of a year. And you can see that we can figure out total money coming in, total money going out. We have an idea every month of where we expect our bank balance to be, basically. Profit and loss forecast really just is very similar to an income statement. It says our revenues up top, followed by our expenses down the bottom. We net the two out, and we know how much profit we're making. The sales forecast is really determining when we plan to sell things, like how many units are we planning on selling in this year, next year, and so on. And startup costs is just an itemized list of what we need in order to get this business started, cost of that, and we will get an idea of our startup costs for operational perspective right there. Now, the pro formas, these are silly names. These pro formas is one of these Latin names, but all it really means is a projected income statement to be able to say, at the end of the year, I expect this much money in income and this much money in expenses. At the end of year 2, I expect, okay? That's going to be based on all of the previous statements. And the balance sheet is the assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. That's going to flow out of that too. You anticipate, for example, how much money you're going to have, how much assets you're going to have, how much liabilities you're going to have, and how much owner's equity is going to be in that business as you move along. Probably one of the key ones, though, is your startup. You need to be able to prove that you have enough money in order to get the business started. So you need a very detailed go on your startup costs and what it's going to cost to get this business rolling. And you need deep enough pockets to keep it rolling too. We talked about too in earlier about break even. Now break even just means you've made enough money to pay all your bills. So basically you've sold enough product that you've made enough money on that product to cover your expenses. And what a break-even tries to do is determine at what point, how many units do you need to sell in order to break even. The formula is pretty straightforward. It's your fixed cost, which is costs that don't change to build a building, for example, divided by your total sales revenue, less your cost to make that product, how much it costs per unit to make the product. That will give you a break-even. The final component that we look at is this idea of risk management. Any business plan is going to need to clearly demonstrate that you've thought about what are some of the risks in this business and what am I doing to mitigate them. We think about risks, we say, okay, we've got internal risks in the business. My employees don't do a good job. My employee sets fire to the business. My employee is incompetent. These sorts of things, what we mean by internal risks. Or external risks. A forest fire ripped through and burned down my business. Okay? So external risks, we don't have any control over. So we generally buy insurance for those. We do need to work harder though at our internal risks to make sure that we preclude them from happening. Trained employees, vetted employees, these sorts of things to make sure that we don't have this problem of some of the issues that come up with employees, for example. So your business plan really should contain some sort of a section on risk. And it shows that you've thought about what the potential risks are and what you're going to do for them. And it's basically anticipating the unexpected. Okay? So risk management is really what we're into. And generally, you can control internal risks once you identify them. So you need to identify them. Then you need to say, okay, here's what I do in order to manage that risk. So types of risks to consider, for example, risks emerge from natural hazards, contracts, legal relationships, could end up in court, financial operations, misconduct of employees, acts of omissions. Oh, I forgot to. Okay. Federal, provincial, municipal laws or regulations, economic conditions, COVID hits. Dependence on outside resources. I'm relying on this company to do this for me. They didn't do it. That affects my ability to do the job. Property loss, again, a tornado, a wildfire. Use of technology. I went and bought all this wonderful technology and now it's obsolete. And the workforce. Do I have a workforce? Are there competent people to do the job? Some of those risks you'll notice are internal. I can control. Some of them are external. The biggest internal risk is people, and you need to manage people. People get sick, people die, people steal things, people lie and cheat, fraud. You need, and that all those need to be mitigated by taking care of your staff, making sure that everybody is covered under health insurance, making sure that there's good morale in the business so people aren't saying, I shagged this place, that sort of thing. You don't want that happening. We also have equipment risks, older equipment, for example. Health and safety issues emerge from older equipment. You got a bucket truck that's 25 years old. We don't know how good it is. Some of the hydraulics on it are kind of wonky. That's where you run into problems with equipment, okay? So a lot of companies, for example, will always say we need new equipment that has the safety standards on it. Things like guards on equipment. Welding machines, for example, that are rather new, have a lot of protecting on them against electric shock. Lathes, for example, new ones have covers and shields to make sure things don't go flying off. So worn parts, older equipment tends to come with some challenges. And administrative controls too, are we keeping track of these problems? Other internal risks, phone lines not working, utilities not working, the building falling apart, injuries. And we talked about occupational health and safety. These injuries can cost you a lot of money in terms of fees for taking care of your employees. Other risks could include things like appraisal costs, how much your business is worth. You need to get it appraised. Closing costs when you buy something, the legal fees. Costs for points to pay down rates. You need to be able to say, okay, in order to get a good interest rate, I can't borrow. I got to pay back it faster. Let's say, for example, I can take a 3-year loan and I get a lower interest rate than a 4-year loan. Well, that has implications for your cash flow. Deposits placed on hold as collateral. Someone gives you a check, for example. When does that turn into cash? Well, if it's placed on hold by the bank, you're not getting the cash right away. Lots of external risks that you really have no control over, but you got to watch out for. Your competitors, the market, all of these things come into play. For example, this week, Instapot went bankrupt. I think every house had an Instapot. I don't know if they're ever used, but that's the thing, right? It's a fatty type, as seen on TV, item. Once people get it, they realize it's no good, it's put in the corner. And sales start dropping off. And that's exactly what happened in the Instapot. So are you selling a product that people are constantly in demand of? Is it constantly being updated? So market changes, business changes. Everyone used to love Frisbees. Nobody buys Frisbees anymore. Are your employees being poached by other companies? Are you potentially losing employees to competitors? Rent increases. Personal conflict is another thing. This is particularly important for owners of business who go into a partnership or have more than one owner. Personal conflicts, the owners don't see eye to eye, and suddenly the business falls apart. Could be a real problem. That's a real challenge. Children become ill, medical emergencies, repairs and maintenance required at home. For a small business owner involved in the community, creates some visibility, but it also creates some grief because you often tick people off. Complacency is a big risk, not looking after stuff. And you got to be very, very careful of that. Business environment risks, federal and provincial municipal laws. Every once in a while, a town makes a law that you can't do something, and suddenly you find, that's not so good. Or if the federal government comes out with emission controls and you got one of these big monster trucks and suddenly the price of fueling that truck doubles because tax on gasoline or tax on diesel goes up. That's a big risk. So what do you need to do ultimately in your risk management process, in your risk management analysis, is you need to start thinking about what am I going to do in order to manage risks. Things like identifying the risks. So your risk management section of your business plan clearly needs to outline what are the risks of my business. What are the vulnerable areas of my business to certain risks? For example, vulnerability to competitors. What are my plans in the case things go bad? So you've got to basically create a plan for all of those risks. What am I going to do if this happens? What am I going to do to reduce this risk? Insurance, getting the right insurance. Make sure that your insurance that you buy covers you for the things you need covered. Think about, general insurance, general liability, but product liability insurance comes into play. Professional liability insurance, if you're an engineering firm or an electrician, for example, you wire someone's house and it burns down, Commercial property insurance, that's going to come into play. There's all kinds of different insurances, and this is where you want to talk to an insurance professional in order to get an idea of what are some of the insurances you need and get that built into the business plan. And they all come with a cost. The final one, step 5, is really looking at this issue of complacency. Monitor. Check, 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 check. So as you're moving along your business, what are new risks that emerge? What are you doing in order to manage those? Adapt as needed. Once you've done all of those things, you should have a decent business plan. And let's say, if we think about pages, a business plan is usually somewhere less than 30 pages, but it's not really pages that's important. It's what do you have the important elements for someone who potentially wants to invest in this business, or the important elements for you to have planned before you actually invest any money into the business. And that is not an easy task, but as I say, where the business plan is a continuing document, it is something that you can evolve as it goes. Don't expect a perfect business plan to start with. If you plan on updating it, that would be the best thing to do in order to make it better. That brings us to the end. You incorporate, so we've looked at 5 modules here. We've taken in the 4 modules that we looked at. We've taken them and we put in this module here. This is like what I call the capstone module that says, here's how you apply all of the things that we've talked about in this course.